So will the meeting between Trump and Zelensky be decisive for the Russian-Ukrainian war? And how will Putin, who was not invited anywhere, react to it? This and other topics we'll discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News, and another YouTube channels. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Irina. Everyone, my name is Yuri Rashkin, and this is the hardest working journalist, I think, in Ukraine, Irina Uzlova. Yuri, it's always great to see you.
Thank you for your time. Let's start with a general question. What are your expectations from the Zelensky-Trump's meeting at Mar-a-Lago this weekend? What do we need to focus on during our conversation with American leader?
Well, I see this as a potential trap for Zelensky, because this is really an opportunity for Trump to pin the tail on this donkey, and to find somebody he can blame for the fact that the peace negotiations have fallen apart and did not work as it was really predicted that they would not work, because it was, whose idea was it? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, this is now we're looking at who is going to be the one to blame. And when we look at options, it's pretty clear that Trump is not going to blame, I don't know, Steve Witkoff, because Steve Witkoff is a golfing partner, nice guy, it's not his fault. He tried. He's practically working for the Russians now. Then there's Jared Kushner, who is part of the family. He can't be blamed for anything. That would look terrible. So no, Jared's great. Plus, Jared has access to all sorts of Middle Eastern money now, so he is super valuable in many levels. Maybe Marco Rubio. Well, Marco Rubio keeps saying how we're so close, and everybody keeps saying we're so close. Does it mean we're close? No, it means that they don't want to be blamed for the failure of these fake negotiations. And then it leaves the question of who is going to be there to blame. Ukraine and Zelensky. And I think that much is becoming obvious to anybody who is paying attention to what's going on, not just people who are going, oh, will there be peace for Christmas? No, there will not be peace for Christmas. And now Trump's attempts to have Zelensky sign capitulation, peace agreement by New Year's is also not going to work, because Zelensky will not sign Ukrainian capitulation. But what Zelensky is doing now is he is gambling on the fact, a pretty solid gamble, I would say, that no matter what kind of a compromise he offers, it will be rejected by Putin no matter what. So then this allows Zelensky a certain amount of flexibility, because he can say, well, we agree to these things that we might not have agreed before, knowing full well that that's not going to be enough. But it allows Ukraine to show leadership, frankly, to show that they're interested in doing certain things that it takes to bring peace. They're willing to do kind of like their part. And on the other hand, we see Russia that's not doing anything that other than just continue the war and continuing having Putin make statements about how we're going to take and accomplish our military goals one way or another, and there's practically blood dripping from his claws. So that's Russian version. So Trump is going to say that these are people that are interested, that are taking part. There's people like Ushakov and different other underlings like Dmitriev, who first of all would like to get money, it's money kind of a thing, and also would like to show that, no, of course, we are interested in peace negotiations, but Ukraine is complicating it by making all of these complications, just capitulate. So I think that Russia is playing this show for Donald Trump, and the only question for me is always, like, why? Why is it? But I think that we heard this from Don Jr. that the United States is a valuable platform for Russia to use to demand to get out of sanctions. Frankly, who is going to help? Because if Trump gets out of the peace process, that means that he is not only going to, forget all the weaponry and everything else, but Russia would really like to get out from under the sanctions. And they really need United States to help them as part of this negotiation process that I think part is subjugating Ukraine and part is bringing Russia back. Well, if Trump is failing at bringing Ukraine to subjugating Ukraine, can he at least bring Russia back from the cold? Well, how? Through the peace process. So I think that there's some interesting dynamics that are happening, and I gotta say, and I have to say that that I see Ukraine actually having gained a lot from the peace process in the process, because it allowed Ukraine to show its leadership, to show that it has positions that negotiate with the United States, to get new allies, to strengthen the relationship with old allies, and to firmly implant the understanding in Europeans' minds that Ukraine is now the guarantee of European safety. That now you can't rely on the United States, especially if your problem is Russia, because the United States doesn't even think that Russia is a problem according to national security strategy document. So then where is Europe going to get its protection from Russia? Ukraine. And I think that 90 billion euros that European Union has just agreed to give to Ukraine is a proof and verification of that. And the fact that this is not Russian frozen money, which is a big deal for some people, is not a big deal for me at all. Because for me, I think that there will be time, because this war is not going to end by Christmas, because Christmas is already passed. And every time Trump said that this is going to be over in 24 hours, he's been wrong. So he's been, I don't know, wrong like 300 times now, because he's been saying it for like a year. So there will be time to use that frozen Russian money, and I think it's also important that Trump is trying to extract that money away from Europeans, because part of the negotiation process is with the sanctions is defrosting Russian money, Russian assets. And Russians are saying that they would much rather deal with Americans in taking the money apart than with Europeans, because, yeah, Europeans are not going to be as nice to Russia as the United States under this administration. So all of those things are pretty logical. But I think Europe, it continues to invest heavily into Ukraine because it understands that Ukraine is the security of its guarantee of its security. And I think that's where the peace process has showed some good things, because Trump is going to announce at some point that this has been fault of Ukraine and Zelensky. It's a matter of time, and I think we're all kind of going, this meeting, that meeting, now in 5 minutes. But in the meantime, Ukraine is showing itself very, very well on the world stage, and is really setting itself up well for the future.
But Zelensky said that Ukraine and US makes significant progress in peace talks. But we should remember that sides of this conflict, of this war, are not United States and Ukraine. It's between Ukraine and Russian Federation. Russian Federation is an aggressor, and they said that we are guilty in that moment, that peace process cannot be finalized by peace they want on their conditions, and Europe and Ukraine are guilty. But Zelensky says that we have progress with the United States. So for what this progress? For what aim?
To show that we are close, because if Kellogg and others like him are going to say that we only have 10 meters left, or 10% or 90%, this whole 9-to-1 idea, first of all, it's important for Ukraine to show that they also believe that they're close to completion, which means that whoever is not completing this is the guilty party, and it certainly isn't Ukraine. It's Russia. But the thing that I find fascinating is when we talk about the 90%, what exactly is part of this 90%? Is it security guarantees? Because they haven't been agreed upon. Is it perhaps territory? No, that's the 10% that's missing. Is it the national sovereignty? Which part of anything is 90%? Because the only thing 90% is that everyone's willingness to participate in the process, and that's not the same thing as being as completing the process in the peace that can even be said to last any amount of time. So I think that Ukraine is. This is just trying to function within the parameters set up by the United States, and I think that the peace is, could be, the war could be over any day. Anytime Putin decides that he's ready to stop the war will be over. And unfortunately, our president overestimated his ability and the quality of his relationship with Vladimir Putin, because Vladimir Putin doesn't seem to give a crap about what President Trump thinks, other than to use him to stall for more time, but really continue to not win the war. And I think that's really an important message, because we just saw an editorial from Senator McConnell and Senator Shaheen, one Democrat, one Republican, and I hope I don't have to explain to anybody which one is which. But bottom line is, they wrote that Ukraine is winning, that Russia is not winning, that there's all these people that are saying that Ukraine is going to lose anyway. Information, that statement is not backed up by facts. And so what we're hearing is this kind of a narrative trying to set us up that this is a losing thing, that we need to get out of this now. And I think that it's important to see that we have bipartisan support, political bipartisan support, to kind of try to counterbalance a little bit of this really aggressive administration that is using the fact that, as Secretary Rubio said, foreign policy is at president's will. So if that is truly the situation, then all the statements from Lindsey Graham and others seem even more pointless, because we see that this president does not agree to anything that requires him to do anything. So any sanctions are not going to go anywhere, because if he has to do it, he's not going to do it. And he already has all the authority for all the sanctions already from the prior administration, Biden. So I think it's it's important to see that this administration will continue to move in the direction of accommodating Russian agenda. And Ukraine is realizing this, except that I feel like there's a sense from allies and perhaps even Ukraine that if you really tell Donald Trump what you think he's doing, that he might take his toys and go to Russia. Not at first, not literally, but over time, in terms of policy, because as long as Europeans, including Ukrainians, are saying that, well, the United States is the most important part of NATO. It's daddy, we so care about you being part. Then he's really not on Russian side openly. And I think that is really pretty much the distinction of these negotiations and all of this diplomacy. Because if Europe just tells the U.S. to screw off because it is really hurting European security, then I think United States, especially under this president, especially when it comes to foreign policy, will continue to strive even more to fall in line with the Russian agenda. And it's important to note that it's not what Trump's electorate wants. Because, any electorate in the United States, because Democrats don't want negotiations that are trying to force Ukraine to capitulate, and MAGA doesn't really want Trump to be this peacemaker on the world stage. As Marjorie Taylor Greene said, if she was president, I believe that was the spin, but she thinks that the president's Air Force One should be gathering dust in a hangar somewhere. So it's not really working for anybody. You can say that this is Trump's desire to get Nobel Peace Prize, but considering that we're hovering over Venezuela and all sorts of other things that this administration is doing, I think we just struck Nigeria. Well, yeah, we just struck Nigeria. So I don't know how close this is going to put this president to a peace prize of any sort, except from FIFA. But this is an administration that has its priorities very clearly defined, and it continues to move in those directions no matter what voters want, really just dependent on what they're able to do. And that's why it's so important that during the next elections, in 2026, the Democrats regain control of at least House of Representatives, if not the Senate, because either we're going to have the 2026 is going to be a year where the 27 is going to be a year where we're going to have investigations from House of Representatives, and we're going to have possibly impeachment for crimes that may be discovered in the process. or we might have an administration that feels even more emboldened to continue with its policies, who feels reaffirmed by the voters, whether the elections are fair or not, if this administration is going to claim that they won anyway. So I think that if depending on what happens in 2026, we'll have a very good idea about what's going to be happening in 2027. But either way, I think that these conversations about the peace process, I don't like giving people false hope. And at the same time, I like the idea of a peace process and peace negotiations. So for me, and I think for others, it's been kind of difficult to talk about, to openly like poo-poo on the peace process. But when we look at its context and foundations for this, how we got here, it's pretty clear that it was always fake. It was going to be fake. And the question was, how can this be blamed on Ukraine in the end?
Yes, but I think that why not designate Russia as state sponsor of terrorism? That would solve almost all the issues at once.
You make a good point. And I think from the point of view of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that when he looks at Venezuela, he sees that we can do different things with Venezuela than with Russia or with other countries that we don't like in this world because, well, they're just criminals. And criminals, they deserve grand juries. They deserve, the kind of a treatment that comes with being declared a terrorist state. And I believe that Trump either declared them or is about to, or is kind of hovering that with. I'm trying to think. I want to make sure that I don't get the information wrong. But didn't Trump declare Venezuela a state sponsor of terrorism or something similar to it? In the meantime, I think that bottom line is that Trump, Senate, Lindsey Graham can attempt to name Russia anything. They can, write in comments what you think that name would be. But Trump is not going to do bad things, no matter what Russia is called, or if it's sponsor of terrorism, if it's a barbarians at the gate, if this is caveman at, whatever, then that's, you can do that if you have the power. But we see by Epstein case right now that we can have almost unanimous decision by vote by the entire Congress and signed by president, and yet they were supposed to Department of Justice to turn over everything they had within a month. That was the law, and they are struggling to do that, which means that their adherence to laws is once again looks very iffy and problematic.
A lot of problems with this administration, but a lot of opportunities also. And all depends on choice Trump can make in the nearest future or the next year or near Nobel Prize terms.
Who knows? I think he fundamentally needs to get disappointed in Putin. I think he really needs to believe that Putin is not in his best interest, because the problem is for many, many years, when Trump looks in his wallet, he sees Vladimir Putin there. And so he's been his state sponsor of everything. And so I think if there was a way in this palace politics world that we live in, where we get our most up-to-date information about what goes on inside the White House, not from even New York Times sometimes, but the best insight is from a podcast where people are sharing information in a kind of a just a conversational way, but that's how information gets out. Then this is the administration that we're dealing with, and I think that this administration just can't make choices that are going to, they continually make bad decisions and bad choices, and that's something that this administration is not likely to stop doing. But then they have one scandal, then they use another scandal to cover up the old scandal. And what it basically goes back to is the Epstein case, and the Epstein files is something that is hovering over this administration, and it seems to be like the defining thing. It's almost like it's a ghost. It's almost a Shakespearean play of a ghost haunting the main character. and then affecting the outcome of this, of how this is going to happen, how things are going to turn out. Because without Epstein, we would have just had a bunch of stuff that Democrats and liberals were whining about, and everything is really great, and Republicans are happy. But with Epstein case, we see that this is a MAGA crisis. This is something that affects voters. This was something that was a foundational conspiracy, as was viewed at the time, for their movement. So for Trump to completely ignore that was a bad idea. And now it seems like this is maybe the spot where Republicans have lost the fear. Which is really important. We also see that there's been a breakup in Heritage Foundation, where the Republicans and conservatives have left. In part because of how they see Ukraine is being treated by this administration. Because, if Ronald Reagan was alive, he'd probably die of a heart attack, because this administration is doing things that would be so abhorrent to old school Republicans that we see them now leaving. There's a think tank institute, that is considered pivotal for the political direction of this country. So I only hope that this means that there will be reasonable Republicans who will win in elections and will beat out MAGA candidates, and this will allow our politics to shift to center. But at the same time, we see that Democrats are so angry and frustrated and frightened right now that to imagine that they're going to be sensible and reasonable is hard to imagine for me, especially, when I think about the pendulum swinging, and that pendulum swinging to the left might be worse than pendulum swinging to the right. But nonetheless, the pendulum is in motion. So we'll see where all of this leads us to. But in the meantime, all we can do is just support Ukraine, because Ukraine right now is the foundation of democracy in this world.
It's a pity that Trump can attack ISIS terrorists in Nigeria, but not Putin, because Putin is the main terrorist in the whole world, really.
It is, and I think that these attacks and strikes on Nigeria are also another indication of how much this administration is driven by news headlines and occasional attempt to appease its base in the way that Trump understands. It's not war, it's violence. He is against war, but he's fine with aggression and with pressure. And if he can say Merry Christmas, I struck Nigeria, and now we see that this country that persecuted Christians got punished for its deeds on Christmas. I don't think that's what Jesus would do. But that's just part of the conversation. I think that this is a pandering to base in the worst possible way, because this is also trying to show that in America, where you have all sorts of societal ills, we also have to remember about persecution of Christians and especially white men, because they are struggling so much in this country. We just really haven't talked enough about them. They really haven't been given enough respect in this country. And so we're going to talk about Christians in Nigeria, but we're going to think about Christians and whites in the United States.
Yuri, thank you very much for today's our conversation, for your time and your opinion. See you next week. Take care.
See you next week. Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English. My name is Irina Uzlova. Thank you guys for joining and watching us. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, please. Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News, and War and Politics 24, and my YouTube channel Uzlova Talks. Thank you. Take care.